Scrooge was not reading now, but walking up and down the schoolroom despairingly. Scrooge looked at the ghost, and with a mournful shaking of his head, glanced anxiously towards the door. It opened, and the little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in, and putting her arms around his neck, and often kissing him, addressed him as her dear, dear brother. "I have come to bring you home, dear brother," said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. "To bring you home, home, home." "Home, little Fan?" returned the boy. "Yes," said the child, brimful of glee. "Home for good and all. Home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. That home is like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed, and I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, yes, you should. And he sent me in his coach to bring you. And you're to be a man," said the child, opening her eyes. "And are never to come back here. But first we're to go together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in the world." "You are quite a woman, little Fan," exclaimed the boy. She clapped her hands and laughed, and tried to touch his head, but being too little, laughed again, and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him in her childish eagerness towards the door, and he, nothing loath to go, accompanied her. Hello, 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 and welcome to this edition of the Jolly Heretic. Now, today I would like to talk about the issue of family and the issue of religion and the deep reason why it is that left-wing people are incapable of being religious and why this basically sends them mad. Now, what we have to understand is, let us look at what it is to be evolutionarily adaptive, what it is to be evolved to a harsh yet stable ecology. Now, what it involves is a series of concentric circles based around the self. And you will see in the thumbnail to this video that I have shown you how those operate when you compare left-wing people to right-wing people in terms of heat maps. Your moral circles, that is to say, who makes you warm and happy and gives you a sense of belonging, will begin with your immediate family, then all of your extended family, then all of your closest friends, then all of your friends, including distant ones, then all of your acquaintances, all people you've ever met, all people in your country, all people on your continent, all people on all continents, all mammals, all amphibians, reptiles, mammals, fish and birds. 12, all animals on Earth, including amoeba. Finally, all animals in the universe, including alien life forms, and then all living things in the universe, including rocks and trees. And finally, all natural things in the universe, including inert entities. Now, the sense of warmth, the heat map in terms of how you feel you should behave morally towards these people, is the hottest for people who are conservative, for people who are right-wing, in terms of their immediate family, their extended family, their closest friends, and so on, in terms basically of distance, not from self, because they feel they should be self-sacrificing when it comes to self, but certainly in terms of people that are relatively close to them. They feel a very strong attachment to their extended family, to their extended group. They have a strong sense of identity that goes beyond them into something eternal, and that something eternal ultimately is their nation, the people of their country, and perhaps the people of their continent. Among people who are left-wing, this is precisely reversed. They feel the least sense of it, that it is inverse. They feel the least attachment to those who are, in a sense, genetically closest to them. Because as we have discussed on here before, we can pass on our genes directly via having children, but we can also pass them on indirectly. So our kin, if we help our kin and aid our kin, we are indirectly passing on our genes. Our cousins share 12.5% more of our genes than does a baseline member of the population. If you compare two English people and two French people, an English person will on average be genetically closer to another random English person than he will be to a random French person. And therefore, by aiding a random French person, he will be indirectly passing on his genes. This is called inclusive fitness. Even with friendships, it has been found that close frail friends tend to be more genetically similar than would be the case by chance, because with friendships, you are aiding each other and indirectly passing on your genes. Therefore, there is a sense of a moral circle in which it is felt that you should treat your family, your extended family, your closest family, whatever, you should look out for them. You should aid them because for disproportionately to other people, because that is indirectly aiding yourself and your own genetic interests. Now, with left-wing people, the situation is precisely the opposite. The more distant is the group from them, then the more they want to act morally for them. So they are the kind of people that would betray their friends for the good of humanity as a whole, betray their family for the good of humanity as a whole, or even for the good of animals, that have nothing to do with them. So it's a complete inverse of the normal moral circle. It's the opposite. Now, what does it do as an individual if you have this kind of moral circle that the Conservatives have? There is a degree to which it means that you live forever. There is something greater than you. Richard Dawkins has this concept of the selfish gene. The idea is that the gene does not involve simply a person. It is beyond the person. The person is merely a conduit for the genes. If you look out for you are evolved to want to look out for the interests of the gene, because that's ultimately what motivates you. And therefore, if you bond with and treat morally people that are genetically similar to you, then you are kind of ensuring that you live forever, that the gene, the ultimate level, the ultimate expression of evolution, the gene will be passed on. It will live beyond you in the form of your family, in the form of your friends who will be disproportionately related to you, in the form of your nation. Now, the left-wing people take this to a ludicrous extent, that they don't, in a sense, that they divorce the gene from themselves so much that nothing really lives on, that what lives on is so distant from them that it doesn't really matter. So these are the two separate ways of seeing the world. Now, how can you end up as a left-wing individual? How can you end up like Scrooge, basically, as a selfish, individualistic person? Well, let's have a look at how this process can take place. Now, first of all, as we've looked at in other videos, the mutant says in his heart, there is no God. The mutant says in his heart, he's left-wing. There is a strong degree to which being left-wing is associated with being high in mutational load, that phrase we use so much on this channel. Now, why is that the case? Well, we were evolved under harsh Darwinian conditions over hundreds of years to be group-oriented, to be high in pro-social values and whatever, because it is the group that is high in positive ethnocentrism and negative ethnocentrism, internal cooperation and external violence, that will tend to survive under harsh Darwinian conditions. So that's what we've been selected towards. With the Industrial Revolution, we have child mortality at 50% due to better medicine, better living conditions, all of this kind of stuff that I've looked at before. Child mortality collapses down to 1%. The result is a rise in people who would not have survived under harsh Darwinian conditions. And on average, those people are going to be more individually oriented towards being individualistic, because that's what would have been selected out, rather than being group-oriented. Now, those people tend to have liberal, left-wing values. We have 5 moral foundations, the individualizing foundations of harm avoidance and equality, which are for the good of the self, i.e. if you have equality, you have more proportionately. If you have harm avoidance, you avoid harm for yourself. And the group-oriented values of obedience to authority, sanctity, that is to say the holy, that which binds the group together, and loyalty to the in-group. Conservatives are about equal in all 5 moral foundations, which makes sense because we are both pack animals and people that must rise to the top of the pack in order to pass on our genes, because it tended to be that social status predicted passing on your genes under pre-industrial conditions. But you also have to as well, be group oriented, because it's the group that is more group oriented that tends to survive. So with the collapse of Darwinian conditions, you're going to get a deviation from that, and so it's going to make sense that being left wing is associated with being physically ugly and thus having an asymmetrical face, and this has been shown. It's going to be associated with being mentally ill, and this has been demonstrated. It's going to be associated with being physically ill, and this has been demonstrated, and it's going to be associated with being left-handed, because this betokens an asymmetrical brain and thus high mutational load, and this has been demonstrated. So basically, the left-wing person is more likely to be high in mutational load. We've looked at that many, many times. Now, how this is going to manifest, of course, is them being ugly and antisocial and adapted to an environment, what we call an R strategy. So we have these two extremes of environment. You have the environment that is easy yet unstable, in which you live fast and die young. Now then, the selection pressure is weak, and you simply have to pass on your genes as quickly as possible. You're individualist. You don't make bonds with people because they might not be reciprocated. There's no need to cooperate. Anybody can survive, and so therefore you end up with all this mutation in that environment. This is selected against to be a harsh, so-called K strategy, harsh yet stable ecology, and then you get highly group-oriented people, and those people tend to be conservative. So let's have a look then at how at the environmental as well as at the genetic level, people can become like this. So you start off as an individualist, you're going to be high in mutational load, high in mental instability, you're going to feel negative feelings strongly, you're going to be low in agreeableness, altruism, you're going to be low in impulse control, you're going to have lots of fights, you're not going to get on with people. So you're going to have a weak sense of attachment to your parents, a weak sense of love in your household, a background already of lots of poor relationships. You won't really have a feeling of security and love and a sort of a strong sense of who you are. You won't have particularly strong bonds with your parents or friends or anything like that. You're going to have trouble making friends because you're going to have poor social skills. You're going to have trouble sustaining friendships because you're going to be mentally unstable and feel negative feelings strongly. You're going to easily get into fights. And what this is going to lead to then is a sense of paranoia, a sense that people hate you, a sense that you hate other people, a very strong sense of jealousy, a very strong sense of just loathing of the group which you are presented with as being your group. You will feel isolated from them. You will feel under threat from them. You will therefore have a Machiavellian desire to have power over them and to control them, because you will fear them, because you will be mentally unstable and you will feel these negative feelings very, very strongly. And only that, you will be paranoid. The slightest thing that they do will make you think that they hate you, and they will read into it that you hate them, and therefore they will hate you back. And so you will set yourself up as this alienated individual who has no sense of bonding, to friends, to family, to all of the groups that you're supposed to be bonded to. No. You will feel that you are an isolated individual in a cold, harsh, unpleasant, unpredictable world, and there is nothing beyond you. You might as well be solipsistic. You might, it's almost like psychopathic. There is nothing beyond you, but you will also combine these feelings with a sense of worthlessness, with a sense that you don't matter, with a sense that you're not important, with a sense that everybody hates you. You are like Scrooge. You are the left out boy at school that nobody likes, and you feel that more keenly than is the case. Now, this can incentivize you, this loathing, this jealousy, to get back at the people that you feel have rejected you, people, family, the nation, the people that you're supposed to want to help in order to aid your genetic interests, to get back at them and to go for individual power as against the group. Now, how do you go for individual power? How do you attain power as an individual? Well, one of the things you can do is treason. You can identify with those that are outside the group, that are other to the group, and thus get a sense of power over your own in-group through allying with people that are outside the group. And therefore it will make sense for you to identify and to feel as your moral circle people that are more genetically distant from you in terms of how genetically related they are to you, i.e. humanity as a whole. as opposed to your own ethnic in-group or your own family or whatever it happens to be. So there'll be a sense in which you reject your own family, you reject your own ethnic in-group. Now you will also, of course, have this deep, panging sense that you're worthless and useless and rubbish, and it is really the essence of borderline personality disorder, and you will need to find for yourself a cause. You will need to find for yourself a strong sense of identity, some kind of cause, some kind of thing that makes you feel superior, that makes you feel morally superior to these ordinary, normal people. And that, of course, will be a left-wing cause, because you will be physically ugly, you will be physically weak, you will perceive yourself as physically weak, and therefore you daren't play overtly for status through power games, because you feel you could be beaten up by the ordinary people. So therefore you will signal for status via virtue signalling, which is a kind of a dishonest, covert strategy where you attain status covertly by seeming nice. You're not really nice, of course, but by seeming nice, or by going on about equality or whatever, and therefore again by seeming nice. And so this is how you end up with it. But you do have this borderline personality. You do have this constant feeling of worthlessness, and therefore the only way you can compensate for that is by going on and on about how moral you are, and also by projecting your own feelings that you hate about yourself onto other people. And this is what you see again with left-wing people. Ultimately, they strongly desire power, they strongly desire control, and they strongly they deal with their insecurities by perhaps making themselves believe that they are superior to other people. When they see this in other people, i.e. happy, right-wing, conservative, religious people, they project all of their self-hatred onto those people. They ultimately, in a sense, I think they are attracted to those people. They are power hungry. They like power. They're attracted to power, because if you have all these feelings of insecurity, then ultimately you can deal with it by having power. If you're an individualist, that's ultimately what you want. You live in an unstable environment in which you could be killed at any time. There's no point strongly bonding with people because it might not be reciprocated. So you are an individualistic, power hungry person. You love power, but you also have low self-esteem, and you're weak and you're unattractive and whatever, and you're excluded, and therefore you rebel against the regnant power, but ultimately you love that power and you're attracted to that power. So you go on and on and on about these. It gives you almost a thrill to go on and on and on about these people that actually in your view have power. And no matter how much power you have, you will never feel you have enough power, because you'll always feel insecure. So you'll always struggle for more and more and more power. Always there'll be some group that's against you, that's trying to destroy you, some right-wing conspiracy or whatever it happens to be. But this is the kind of people that these people are. They have ultimately a weak sense of identity. And what is it that gives us a strong sense of identity? What is it that means we don't have borderline personality disorder? It is being brought up as Scrooge was not. Remember, Scrooge rails against Christmas and religion. It was being brought up in a secure, stable environment with people who love you, and who clearly love you, and who look after you, who come when you cry, who are there for you, who you can trust. Ultimately reducible to a father and a mother and siblings who are similar to you and who love you, and you can trust them, and it's mutual, and you know deep, deep down that everything is going to be okay for both genetic reasons and environmental reasons. You bond with these people. You are an expression of particular genes. They are an expression of the same genes, and the gene lives on after you in your children, in your nephews and nieces, in your cousins, in your friends, in your nation, and there is something eternal. And it's been shown that conservatives have a sense, not only are they lower in mental instability, but they have a strong sense in which life has meaning. Life has eternal meaning. There is something eternal, and that eternal thing is the gene. This is not the case for left-wing people. They don't identify with that. They are evolved to an environment of just total individualism, in which there's nothing beyond you. You are just a lump of consciousness thrust into a dark and unpleasant world in which you have to struggle for power, and when you die, it's all over. And so you just feel this sense of despair, and you have to deal with it. And I think explains the anger, the contradictory feelings, the love of power, but yet the signalling that you hate power, all of this stuff which messes up the left-wing mind. Deep down, they want what the right-wing people have. They love that. They want it. They want to be able to feel like that sense of certainty that you'll find at a university Christian union or whatever. But they don't have that, and they can't deal with it. And the only way, therefore, they can deal with it is by making a virtue out of a necessity and making out, oh, they don't want to be like that. They're a bit deeper than that. They're more profound than that. They have a greater understanding than that. But ultimately, all it becomes is they're unhappy, and they project their feelings onto the conservative, who ultimately is everything in a sense that they would desire, but they are too fearful, too low in self-esteem to be able to achieve. Now, what does religion do? Religion essentially gives you an eternal family. And this is where I think Freud was correct. Religion gives you a father. The father loves you. You are bonded with the father. You are part of a family of brothers and sisters, eternal. You eat together once a week. You imbibe the body and blood of this father. This father who makes the ultimate sacrifice for you in order to save you and give you an eternal sense of meaning. Now, it could be argued that the problem with Christianity is that it is evangelical. It goes beyond the tribe and therefore is open up to being subverted from within. That is as true. But on the other hand, if you have two ethnic groups fighting it out, then the biggest group will win. So there is a sense in which they have to be evangelical. They have to create large polities. Always, ultimately, the large polity will destroy the smaller polity. That is how Charlemagne managed to expand Christendom. That is how Islam managed to expand, by creating a larger and larger polity. And yes, it means that at the edges, particularly under weakened Darwinian conditions, then you're going to get sects that are going to rise up that are going to be utterly maladaptive and self-destructive. But in general, what is going to happen is the largest polity will win. And it is a polity based around a sense of eternal family, because that is really what we ultimately all desire. And a sense of eternal family in which our parents and our siblings and whatever love us, and we feel that everything is going to be okay. The thing with the leftist is he doesn't feel that everything's going to be okay. He feels that nothing is going to be okay, and therefore life for him is an eternal struggle, an eternally unhappy life in which he has to project his profound feelings of self-hatred, his borderline personality disorder sense of insecurity and weak identity and not knowing who he is, meaning that he has to negotiate an identity through finding constant causes and espousing those in the most extreme way to give him a superficial sense of identity. But the identity will always ultimately be weak, and there will always ultimately be this sense of self-loathing, and he'll be able to deal with that via dissociation, via projecting his feelings that he's inadequate, that he's nasty, that he's power-hungry, which he is, onto other people. And that is what we're dealing with. That is Scrooge, at least before Scrooge saw the light. I hope this has been of interest. If it has, please subscribe. It really helps if you do that. Please remember to subscribe at Odyssey. Please remember that I live stream Mondays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. UK time, and I will see you soon. Goodbye and Merry Christmas.